Hi, Master Megan Linger here. Today we're going to go over some of my seminar topics that I was going to teach in Vegas, but now I get to provide to you via video. The topic of my seminar was going to be fighting, from testing to tournament to real life. We're going to start off with some of the testing ideas, great as a warm-up, great as drills. I'm going to provide to you how I like to call out testing combinations for my students here. Then we're going to get into some tournament ideas. I'm going to show you some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way and some of the things that I've even learned from my students or teach to my students. It works great for them. It's worked great for me in the past as well. Lastly, we're going to go over real life fighting. I want to kind of cover how testing and tournament fighting differ from real life fighting, but I also want to talk about some of the ways they can be similar and some of the ways that training for testing and tournament fighting can help you in a real life situation. Inevitably, I really just want you guys to have fun, get up, get moving, potentially even learn something. And thanks for being a part of the UFAF Nation. Here's a little bit about myself. I've been training in martial arts for 20 years, ever since I was 5 or 6 years old. I've also been teaching martial arts for over a decade. I started teaching under Master Medelsky in Stafford, Virginia. And then from there, when she retired, I decided that I had a passion for teaching and martial arts and was going to open up my own school. From there, I've relocated here to West Virginia and still continue to hold that dream. In addition to teaching and owning a school, I've also trained in a bunch of different martial arts. Not only the Chuck Norris system and Krav Maga, but I've also trained in Aikido, I've done Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, boxing, I've done Muay Thai, among other things. Of course, my passion lies with the Chuck Norris system and recently Krav Maga. But one of the other things that I absolutely love doing is fighting. Here at my school, I have a bunch of programs. Of course, I have the Chuck Norris system programs. I have Krav Maga. I have self-defense for women, self-defense for kids. I have a Tiny Tots program. But I also have fighting programs in place. I do fighting programs for kids and adults because I think it's important for all of them to know. And some of the things that I teach in those fighting is I teach the basics, and then from there we transition into like a point fighting situation, and then eventually we get into more of a real life situation, which is exactly what this seminar is going to be about today. So that being said, that's a little bit about myself. I hope you guys enjoy. Stay tuned. So let's start off with a warm-up. With my warm-ups, I like to incorporate a lot of the stuff that's already on the testing sheet, such as slide-ups, lunging, switch steps, stutter steps. All that good stuff I think are great to input into a warm-up. So for starters, let's go ahead and get in a fighting stance. Now there's different fighting stances that I do here at my studio. We've got more of the boxer stance, we've got more of the point fighter stances. I like to switch back and forth and make sure you do what's comfortable for you. So for starters, we've got our basic lunge. That's the first one on the sheet, that's the first one we usually do. It's really great to make sure that your head level stays the same because that's also going to work your legs out. So what I like to do is I'll say forward or backwards, keeping your hands up. Front leg's going to lift up, you push off with your back leg forwards. Good, and then when I say backwards, your back foot lifts up slightly, and I push back with my front leg backwards. So you got forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. And we do that a bunch of times along with me saying switch feet and adding different punches and strikes. So let's get started. Forward, backwards, forward, forward, switch feet, backward, backward, forward, forward, backward, backward, switch feet, forward, forward, backward, backward. Great job. Let's add on to that. Not only do I like to do the lunges forward and backwards, but it's also important to know how to move sideways. So from here, not only do you say forward or backwards, but you can also say left and right. Now, depending on how this video is presented to you, I'm just going to go with what is my actual right and my actual left. All right? So if you're following along and listening, you go to your actual right and your actual left. So for me, my right leg right now is in front. So whenever I say right, my right leg has to lift up just a little bit, and my left foot has to push to the right. Notice how I don't cross my feet. Now when I go to the left, my left foot's going to lead, and my right foot's going to push off. Again, notice how I don't cross my feet. So right, right, left, right, left. Just like that. So with that, we're going to add that into the forward and backwards. Forward, forward, right, left, backwards, backwards, left, right, right, forward, back, forward, back, right, left. Switch feet. Forward, forward, back, back, left, right, left, right. Just like that. So next, we're going to go over how you can do that with a partner. Left leg forward, and you're going to get in a fighting stance. How I do this with my students is what I do is I talk directly to one person. So they're the one that's going to be controlling the situation. The other person has to control the distance. So for example, if I say forward, that means I'm going to go forward and he has to go backwards. So if I say lunge forward, I'm lunging forward, he's lunging backwards, just like this, lunge forward. And then if I say backwards or lunging backwards, I'm the one that's being talked to and he has to follow. He has to control the distance. Lunge backwards. Forwards, backwards. Forwards, backwards. Forwards, backwards. Forwards, backwards. Switch feet. Forwards, backwards. Forwards, backwards. Forwards, backwards. Just like that. And then once you or your partner or your students get a hang of it, then you can start switching it up. Going forwards a couple times, going backwards a couple times, and then make sure you always give the other person a chance to control the distance as well. Once you've gone forwards and backwards, then you can work on the side to side. So we both have our left leg forward. Again, talk to one particular person. So if you have a bunch of students lined up, one side will be the ones you're talking to, the other side are in charge of controlling the distance and reacting to whatever their partner is doing. So if I say right, that means I have to go right and he has to follow, just like this. And if that happens, that's fine. So if I go right, that means he has to go left. And then if I go left, he'll have to go right. So right, left. Right, left, right, left, right, and left. Switch feet. And again, one person's being talked to, the other person has to react. And because you're talking to the other person, that adds a little bit of pressure, so you're pressure testing this as well. Same thing. Also, another habit to get into is make sure you're not looking down at their feet. Try to just stare at the tee. All right, so if we're here, ready? Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, and left. And then of course, always switch so the other person can do it. Last thing, you're gonna mix it up. Forwards, backwards, right, and left. So we both have our left leg forward, forwards, backwards, left, right, forwards, backwards, left, right. Backwards, forward, right, left, right, left, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, left, and right. So with added instructions and stuff like that, it'll be okay because your partner and you will probably get mixed up a little bit. But once you do it long enough and you get a flow with it, that's when you can start having a little bit of a flow drill. So for example, what I'm going to do is in my own head, I'm going to control the distance. I'm not going to say forward, backwards, left, or right, and he'll have to follow. And after a couple times, we'll switch. So it'll look something like this. So you'll just follow through. So not only are you controlling the distance, but you're learning to read other people's movements. Building combinations. That's what we're going to work on for our testing situation. So for example, let's say you have a combination which is lunge, jab, reverse punch, step through front kick, land, jab, reverse punch, which would look like this. And you call that out on a test, but everybody just kind of freezes. they're focused more on trying to memorize it than the actual technique of it. Here's how I call out my combinations for my people testing for their next rank. So let's get started. Go ahead and put your left leg forward, fighting stance. The first one we're going to do is a lunging jab. So whenever I count, you're going to do a lunging jab. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back up. Right leg forward, fighting stance. Lunging jab. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next thing that we do is backwards as well. So from here, left leg forward, fighting stance. Lunging jab. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch feet. Lunging jab. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that you've done the lunging jab, that should be memorized. Not only that, but the technique should be fine-tuned and ready to go. So after we do that, we'll add something onto that. Left leg forward, fighting stance. Lunging jab, reverse punch, moving forward. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch feet. Same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. So continuing on with that building combination, we have a lunging jab, reverse punch. After that, let's get used to driving forward. So with that, we're going to add a step through, which is really awkward at first because you just step towards the opponent, but what that's getting you used to doing is controlling the distance. All right? So you have your left leg forward, you got your fighting stance ready to go. We have our combination we just went over, so it's ingrained in our memory. Lunging jab, reverse punch, and then you add a step through. So that reverse punch is pulling you into it, and you establish another good fighting stance. So let's watch that again. Left leg in front. Lunging jab, reverse punch, step through. And that's the next combination. And with this one, you switch feet. So, left leg forward. 1, 2, and 3. With the step through. One more time. So, left leg forward, fighting stance. With this, you should be able to have good technique and focus on the little details of each combination instead of trying to memorize a huge long combination. Ready? Lunging jab, reverse punch, step through. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. So, the next one we're going to do, we're going to stick to just hands. You've got your lunging jab, reverse punch, step through. We're going to add a reverse punch. That punch that was originally out there that was dragging yourself forward or pulling yourself forward turns into a cover, and now you have a counter punch. So again, on the other side, lunging jab, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. If your students have a hard time with that and they need to get the coordination down, you could break it down to even more and just focus on the punch, step through, punch. That would look something like this. Reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. 1, 2. And with this, not only are they focusing on the hip action, because it's just reverse punches, but they're also focusing on the step and the covers. So again, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. And again, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. Again, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. All right. So let's do both of those going across the floor. Let's start with the reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. And then we're going to add some stuff to that. We're going to build onto it. Reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like that. Now let's add a jab to the beginning of that. So we've got the coordination down. We're just adding something onto the front. Left leg forward fighting stance. jab, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. By now, this should come very easy for your students. So, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like that. So one avenue you can go down is just strictly punches. And then you start adding the footwork. Kicks and legs are a whole nother thing for them to think about. So I always start with just the punches first, make sure they got the upper body and the footwork down before we even incorporate the kicks. So with that being said, let's go ahead and add a kick in there now that we've got a complete combination. So the new combination is going to be, we're going to add a kick into it. You've got lunging jab, reverse punch, step through, but we're going to turn that into a front kick. Front kick, reverse punch. All right, so we're still building. We're still adding one move at a time, but this time it's going to be a kick. So, lunging jab, reverse punch, step through, front kick, reverse punch. Again, lunge jab, reverse punch, step, front kick, reverse punch. All right, now that you're familiar with it, you can start using numbers instead of walking through. Whenever they're first learning a combination, especially at intermediate or advanced levels, I like to break it down first. So that way, again, they're focusing on technique and not memorizing. Once they get the technique down, then it should come like second nature. So, left leg forward, fighting stance. Lunging jab, reverse punch, step through, front kick, reverse punch. 1, 2, and 3. Just like that. I have a base combination of about 3 or 4 moves with a couple footwork, a lunge in the beginning, and a step through in the middle. You can add things to it. For example, you can do a lunging jab, reverse punch, step through, front kick, back knuckle, reverse punch. Just kind of adding those sneaky little things. From here, you could add any kick. You could add back knuckles, you could add jabs. You can mix it up however you want. Because you have a base combination, it'll just be a matter of taking out one thing and adding another. So as a final note on smaller combinations, start very simple with 1 footwork and 1 technique. Make sure that they got that down, and then from there, you can mix it up and build into a larger combination. So now that we've kind of gone over a bunch of the different combinations and building combinations, this kind of is a great segue into our tournament fighting. So still working those building combinations, but this time you have a partner. So usually for starters, especially for beginners, you give them a couple focus mitts or you give them one of the focus pads or targets, or if you're comfortable hitting on each other with good control, that's fine as well. So you start off with the lunging jab, reverse punch. So how it'll work is he has his hands up and I'm close enough to hit, but just a little further back. So how it'll work is you could do it with some distance controlling, but for the most part, we're just working the combination. So whenever I do my lunging jab, of course I go cross, and then my reverse punch is cross this way, and then I work my lunge back. So not only am I closing the distance, but I'm also getting myself away. So I'm working that evade, I'm working that quick attack, and I'm working that get out so he can't get his attack. And eventually you can kind of do this with a partner. So, well, with a partner where they're striking you as well. So for starters, the first drill is, whenever I say 1 or 2 or 3, you're gonna work that first combination we worked on, which is just a lunging jab. So ready, 1, lunge jab, reverse punch, and then lunge back. So practice always getting out, which in a point fighting situation is exactly what you wanna do. You wanna get in, you wanna get out. Ready, 2, and then back. 3, and then back. 4, and then back, and then 5. And then of course you'll switch feet. And you'll do the same thing on the other side. Lunge jab, reverse punch, and back. Lunge jab, reverse punch. 3, 4, and 5. So that'll be the first drill. Lunging jab, reverse punch towards your partner, and lunging back. In conclusion with that one, not only are you closing the distance, but you're also getting away. You're also working your speed and getting comfortable with that combination. So getting into that point fighting, kind of that give and take. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna still focus on that jab, reverse punch, just a quick get in and get out. But now we're gonna do it with a partner. So I'm gonna go and then he's gonna go. So we're gonna be kind of working this back and forth motion. So we're gonna keep in motion. We're going to keep our heart rates up. We're going to keep that distance control going and practice our strikes. And this should be a strike you're familiar with and comfortable with as well. So both of us will have our left leg forward. Whenever it's my turn to strike, he's going to have his hands open, or if you want to put the full gear on, you can actually do it with the real strikes. But for today, for the sake of the video and for the sake of this seminar, we're going to have our hands open. All right? So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to come forward. I'm going to do my lunge jab, reverse punch, lunge back. And now I'm set up ready for him to go. So he's going to do a lunge jab, reverse punch, lunge back. And you can do this for however long you want, but it'll be a continuous flow. So it'll look something like this. Just like that. So that's the first drill, which is just a quick little drill to kind of go forward and backwards. And of course, you're going to want to switch feet and try the other side. So let's go ahead and do that. Just like that. So the last one we worked on was a move in and move out. You get in, potentially get your point, and then you get the heck out of dodge. The next one's going to be driving. So we're setting up or we're building for that blitz into your opponent. So with this one, we're going to do the jab reverse punch first and then the step through. Very much like when we're working on the testing portion where you did the jab reverse punch step through. Same exact thing. And here's what it's good for. If he has his hands up and we're still working, I have my jab, I have my punch. A lot of times if you move forward, it's going to cause them automatically to move back. And then from here, it'll be his turn. So he'll do a jab, punch, and he'll drive forward. Then it's my turn. Jab, punch, his turn. My turn. His turn. My turn. His turn. My turn. And then, once you kind of get a feel for that jab, reverse punch, step through, you can kind of get a flow drill going. So this is not only teaching you to drive forward into the person so you're not always moving backwards, but it's also teaching you to kind of read these things. So right now it's a partner drill, and we're not trying to trip each other up, even though it will happen. But if I'm in a real life, or if I'm in a tournament situation, and I'm fighting someone, and I start seeing them maybe come through with that foot, I'm going to learn to read it and then later react to it. So let's go ahead and do a quick little flow drill with that. So he has his left leg forward. My side will start. Jab, punch. And one more. Just like that. And then of course, you'll always switch feet. So if we have the other leg forward, which will be the right leg, my side will go. We got the jab, punch, and the step. And then his side will go. My side, his side. My side, his side. My side, his side. My side. Just like that. So that's another thing you can kind of add into your toolbox. You've got the get in and get out, and then you've got the drive. So now that we've got that drive down, we need to follow through with that drive. You can't just step into someone and expect them to back off. You need to follow through with something. So we're either going to do a reverse punch or we're going to do a front kick. Two of my favorite things that I like to do with that. We're starting off with the reverse punch, which is great for medium distance, meaning they didn't back up that far. So they're not running away, or they're not lunging away too far. They're just kind of moving back when you step into them. Or if they don't move back, you can continue that drive with a strike. So it looks something like this. We're going to do a jab, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch. Now in the last video or in the last section, we talked about having a cover. We're going to do the same thing where you have that jab, reverse punch, step through, reverse punch, and a cover. We're going to do that same thing with them because obviously when you're fighting another person in a tournament, they're trying to get that point too. So you want to cover up all options possible. So we're here. I have my jab. I have my punch. I have my step through. And my first punch turns into a cover. And with this one, let's actually add some contact because we need to get used to getting hit. So he's here, he does his jab, his punch, his step through, reverse punch, and then we're reset, ready to go. So jab, punch, step through, punch, jab, punch, step through, punch. Jab, punch, step through, punch. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. And then eventually you kind of get a flow drill with this one. Now, this one is going to be a little bit more advanced. So as things kind of develop, it's always good to remember that as you're doing these things, this is a point fighting situation, not a testing situation, which is a great place to talk about how those are different. In a testing situation, we're looking for technique. We're looking for more organized sets of combinations to make sure you know the skills. And a point fighting situation, it's a little bit more spontaneous. So if you see something, you go for it. So that way mistakes are a lot more forgivable in these situations. But that being said, here's a little bit of that flow drill. Just like that. And of course, you'll do it on both sides. But that's the next portion, which is the reverse punch. Now we're going to get into it if they step too far away and you can't reach them with that reverse punch, you can always do a kick. Alright, so this next one, we're going to end up kind of extending it a little further as well. But let's say they step back too far or a little further and that reverse punch isn't going to reach. Or, because you know how point fighting goes, you have someone that's great with their hands. So if you're striking with their hands, they might come in quicker than you. In that case, you want to get more distance, or there already is distance, so you have to do a kick. So if we're here, both of us have our left leg forward. Same thing as the beginning, you've got your lunge, or I'm sorry, you've got your jab, reverse punch, and then he starts moving back because he doesn't want to get hit. My back leg comes through, and I've got that front kick. And then it'll be his turn. Jab, punch, kick. 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 And then once you get the hang of that, you can turn it into that flow drill and run it through a couple times to get comfortable with it. So it should look something similar to this. Just like that. That was a really good set. I was like, all right, we did 4 and they turned out really good. All right, and then the last extended drill into this point fighting kind of combination will continue on, and if you do it fast enough, it'll be a blitz. But we're gonna add 5 techniques, and it's still the same footwork back and forth. So watch how it'll work. You face your partner, you've got a jab, punch, and then that step front kick. Boom, when you land, add your counter strikes. Jab, punch. And if you're moving fast enough, which we'll get to in a second, you can always move past them and behind them, so you're out of their line of fire, which is great for point fighting, and then later we'll talk about how that's good for real life fighting too. So it looks something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then eventually you get a little bit of a flow drill going with that. And once you get comfortable with it, eventually you start picking up the speed. So it'll look something similar to this. Just like that. All right, so that will be the last one that we do for our point fighting. Now let's get into how that can be used in a real life fighting situation. So now that we've kind of gone into some drills to help you with your point fighting and some drills to help you with your testing combinations, either if you're training for your next test or if you have to call out a test. Now we're going to get into the pros and cons of how those work in a real life fighting situation. Number one, we've got the jab and the punch, which seems to be really common throughout all of the fighting combinations, and if it's really well trained for, a really long time, it works. But if I'm here and I just primarily focus on my jabbing and my reverse punching, there's a chance that I could actually hurt my wrist or hurt my knuckles. But you can convert those. Use the same combination, but convert it to work for a more realistic situation. For example, instead of just punching him in the face, you could use it as a shove. You could do a palm heel strike. You could hit with the base of your hand. You could do elbows. Anything. So if he's further away, yeah, sure, maybe I could do my punch. If I'm not comfortable with my punch yet, maybe I'm a new rank, or I'm stressed out, or my adrenaline is just pumping, and I've trained that when that happens, I do a palm heel strike, then you've got your palm heel strike. Reverse punch, same idea. I can come through, I can do the actual punch, I can do another punch to the head, or I can do a palm heel strike, or anything within that realm. The good thing about real life situation with your fighting combinations is there's not a lot of rules. So if I'm here, I can still do my jab reverse punch. I could also do 2 palm heel strikes. I could even do an eye gouge strike, or a web hand strike, or any of those other strikes that we train on the mat, but not in point fighting. Now here's a question. Why don't we train those strikes in point fighting or tournament fighting? Well, the reason why is because they're dirty. I'm not going to come up to someone that I respect and train with often in a tournament and eye gouge or palm heel or web hand strike them. Those strikes are saved for you to put in your back pocket for when there's a real life situation. So you can still do the jab, reverse punch, step through, front kick, jab, reverse punch, but just use some of those techniques you train on the mat, eye gouge strike, palm heel strike, web hand strike, in place of those jabs or reverse punches. Unless you feel real comfortable with your jab and reverse punches, then by all means you can use those. Now, in the point fighting, we talked about the blitz, which would look something like that. If he's standing there, you've got your jab, reverse punch, step through kick, jab, reverse punch, and then you can move off to the side. And if it's done really fast, where I have something like this, and I've got my jab, reverse punch, kick, jab, punch, move back, works really well. Works great for a point because I get in, I get out, I'm not backing up, I'm moving past my opponent. How would that work for a real life situation? Amazingly well, because I'm getting in, I'm getting out, I'm controlling the situation and controlling the distance. I'm taking the opponent or the bad guy off guard, and I'm getting out of the line of fire. So all those still go when you're in a real life situation. So when you're training for your tournament or training for your testing, it's not going to be something that you completely have to redo whenever you're training for a real life situation. You don't have to learn new techniques just to know how to defend yourself. You use the same formula and everything, just switch up little things like we talked about in the beginning whenever you're doing a jab or a back knuckle or a ridge hand strike instead of a jab or a reverse punch. Same thing, just switch out different strikes instead. So if I'm here and it's a real life situation and I've got my bad guy here, I don't have my fighting stance, I have my no fighting stance with my hands open, right? Instead of doing my jab punch from starters, I do 2 palm heel strikes, boom, boom. Instead of doing a traditional, like real snappy, pretty front kick, I do a knee strike. So I've got my double palm heel strike, I've got my knee strike, and then instead of doing another jab reverse punch, well, I've got an elbow strike and a ridge hand strike, and then I move out of the way. So you can take the same pattern and the same combination and make it work for you in a real life self-defense situation. So here's the first one we did. Jab, reverse punch, step, front kick, jab, reverse punch, and then it would be his turn. In a real life situation, it's going to be palm heel, knee strike, elbow, and then move past him. And now he's over in my spot, and I'm in his spot. So if you're training for a real life situation, do more of a rotation. So you're not getting back in front of the bad guy. You're getting behind the bad guy, and then it would be his turn. So watch one more time. Remember, same pattern. Strike, strike, step, strike, strike. Only difference, instead of moving back, you're getting behind him. So if I'm here, remember, strike, strike, step, foot technique, strike, strike, get behind him, and then it would be his turn. So he would do a strike, strike, a step foot technique, strike, strike, get behind, and we would rotate. And you can turn that into a flow drill, you can turn that into a pressure test, but that's how these building combinations can turn into a point fighting situation, and point fighting techniques can be altered and evolved to work for you in a real life situation so you can walk out confidently and like you can protect yourself in the real world.